was curious how like food and in particular like cooking and Zen, like where what that relationship is like when cooking with others or for others or for yourself or just diet and that kind of stuff.
Buddhism in general doesn't have a view about diet. The Buddha didn't give a lot of teaching about food and eating well or anything like that. The Buddha lived a very interesting life. He was a monk, and he had depended solely on the support of other people. So in the Buddha's time, he and his community of monks and nuns they all had a bowl. Each person had a bowl. And they would go out into the village that was nearest to them. They traveled a lot, so at different times they were in different villages, or near different villages. And they would go into the village with their bowls, and people would put food in their bowls. And they would eat whatever was put in their bowl. Meat, fish, birds, rice, whatever was put in their bowl, they would eat it. They didn't check. They just were grateful for the food that they received. They had no other way of getting food. One of the interesting things about our culture, especially modern American culture and European culture, is we have a huge array of choices about food, and so many of us, myself included, have at some time in our lives gotten really wrapped up around food and the kind of food that we eat. Is it organic or not organic? Is it vegetarian? Is it vegan? Is it raw? Does it have spirulina in it? Does it, we go on and on and on and on and on. And over time, it's become to me a little obsessive in its appearance. It comes because we have so many choices. But the Buddhist way is just eat what's given, eat what's served with gratitude. Many beings have gone into your food. That's the important thing to see, is that you are intimately connected with all the beings that have provided for every mouthful of food that you eat. I've talked in the past, some of you have heard me talk about the smell of pizza. Anybody here like pizza? Everybody likes pizza. Boy, it's fabulous. So you're walking down Mass Ave, and you walk by, what's a pizzeria on Mass Ave? Anybody? You walk by some pizzeria on Mass Ave. ABC. And the smell of pizza. Right? So consider the smell of pizza. It doesn't appear by accident. In that smell is the fact that the owner of the business opened that day. The cook showed up that day. The gas company provided gas that day. A farmer somewhere grew wheat. And there are lots of intermediate steps between the farmer planting the seeds and the flour showing up for the pizza dough. Earthworms did their job underneath the wheat. And in every square centimeter of soil, countless microorganisms. I saw a number one time. It was like, had a lot of zeros after it. Countless organisms did their work helping that wheat grow. The soil that the wheat grew in was produced by a volcanic eruption 4 million years ago. The volcano erupted because the plates of the earth actually moved. The earth moves. The earth moves because it was created that way a long time ago, I think 3 billion or 4 billion years ago. And then somewhere a long time before that, there was somewhere in, I don't even know where actually, there was a bang. All of that is in the smell of wheat, and a whole lot more, because my brain's not big enough to actually understand it. I haven't even talked about the tomatoes or the cheese. All of that is in the smell of wheat. The whole world, the entirety of the universe is in the smell of pizza. So the next time you have a piece of pizza, Connect with that. You're eating the entire world. It couldn't exist without everything that's ever existed. So our part of that is so small, and yet we're part of it also. Now, having said all of that, I do think in our modern world, with the challenges that we face, that there are ethical issues associated with food. Issues associated with how food is grown and raised, how it's used, how it's processed, how it's used, how we cook it, how we dispose of waste, if there is any. All of that has significance. All of it has impact. I began practicing in this tradition in 1990, and in 1991, early in 1991, in January, I was living in Seattle at the time. I traveled across to Providence Zen Center, just down the road in Rhode Island, to sit several weeks of retreat in the wintertime. And I arrived a day early so that I could be there for the beginning of the retreat the next morning. And I'd never been there before, and I walked into the kitchen, which is downstairs. It's a big industrial kitchen. And no one was there except for one Korean monk who was living there at that time, and he was cleaning the kitchen. And he had a big pot in which rice had been cooked, white sticky rice. And the rice had been served. It was after the meal. I had arrived late in the day. It was after the meal, so the rice had been served, but there was, as you may know when you cook sticky rice, a lot of rice stuck on the inside of the pot. And he had a pair of chopsticks, and he was taking out every grain of rice and putting it in a container. And I'll never forget this. I saw that, and my mind's jaw dropped. I had never seen food treated like that before. My family didn't treat food that way. It just went into the garbage disposal. But he was meticulously preserving every grain of rice. That changed my life. It really did, honest to God. When I have to waste food now, there's an ache inside. It doesn't feel right to me. So we can have that kind of relationship with food. Actually, we can have that kind of relationship with anything in our lives, not just food. And it changes the world. The good news about being a human being is that our lives matter. They make a difference. Of course, that's the bad news if you want to live a kind of scummy life. But if you're living an upright life, your life will help this world. Everything matters. Everything matters. Everything makes a difference.